It's Rob Bauer with Sharp College Football, and we're back. We're a little later. I've been trying to do these on Mondays, but, Labor Day happened. But yeah, we're here to do the Saturday 6, which is where we run through 6 games of this college football week with an eye to cover games that are interesting from a national perspective, cover games that are close, and cover games that just... I think have some interesting facet for something going on in, college football under the radar. I think we often get caught up in sort of what the larger narratives are for college football. It's easy to get caught up following the big brands in college football, but there are 131 teams in FBS. And what I really like about running an advanced stats model for college football is you get an opportunity to see something new or interesting about all of them. And it's not always good. I mean, sometimes the interesting is bad. In some cases it's comically bad. In some cases it's tragically bad. But what you can also find is, as you're going through, you can find things that are very much working. You can find teams under the radar that are putting it together, that aren't going to necessarily get a lot of national attention. Not going to get the 3:30 time slot on a major network. Not going to get coverage on game day or big noon, but still have something interesting that if you're really into college football, you might want to tune in and check out. Anyway, I'm Rob Bauer, and I'm the econometrician chicken behind BetaRank, an advanced stat system for college football. The stats you're going to see today are from BetaRank, and they're overwhelmingly going to control for field position and opponent, at the very least. Sometimes they're also controlling for explosives. But they'll give you a good idea of the matchups between units, what teams are going to be good at, what they're going to be bad at. Little caveat here, of course, is it is week 2. So the data we're going to show you up until after week 3. After week 3, I'll just start rolling out the in-season data, and we'll sort of live with some wackiness. But the wackiness will be significantly tamped down by the time we get to week 3. Each team at that point will have some comparison points that the model can be making adjustments on. At this point, most teams, we actually, not only do we not have comparison points, a good number of teams have FCS games still in the mix. After week 2, we drop FCS games with BetaRank. They're just not. There's a huge gap in resources between Power 5 and Group of 5. There is a just enormous gap between Power 5 teams and FCS teams. They're in a lot of ways not really playing the same game, and it doesn't behoove us to pretend they are. And the model predicts better without the FCS data in it, which is the ultimate decider here. Anyway, so what you're going to see, I will call out what the current rankings are, even with the sort of small sample size wackiness that is in there. But we'll run over how the teams sort of at a unit and how the units performed at those levels. We'll run through the 2021 data, because for the most part, coordinators are the same. We might have some continuity. We have some player continuity. It gives an idea of what teams are often very good at, what they're bad at, what they're looking to do. And I'll call out if they have a coordinator change or something like that along the way from the last year. That might change how these stats are, how we should look at these stats. That said, I'm really excited for this week. It's, week 1 had a lot of gas. Week 1 for an opening weekend of college football had a lot of marquee matchups, a lot of interesting football. This is a little, the title here is slow at first sight. I think that's somewhat true of this week. There's not as many marquee games out there. In fact, what you would argue is the marquee game. It has a fairly large spread to it. Although last week the marquee game had a fairly large spread to it and didn't quite hit it. The other marquee game, of course, blew right past. I'm talking about Notre Dame and Ohio State. That game ended up being closer than predicted. And then, of course, Georgia blew way past the spread versus Oregon. This week, there's not as many matchups of teams in the top 25, but there's some really good matchups of teams once you get past that like 25 range of teams that, and these are all off of projections. So these are not set in stone finished products. These teams still have upside or downside versus where they currently sit in beta rank, because it is mostly projection model this week. But as we roll, these teams have an opportunity to either put distance between themselves and other teams show us that they are, in fact, going to be better than we were expecting come into this season, or maybe they're right where we expected, or maybe a little worse. But I try to run through and keep it to 5 minutes a game, covering the matchups of offenses and defenses. I have a timer. I occasionally hit the timer. But yeah, we try to spend a good amount of time on each game, but not too much. Try not to take up too much of your time and keep this somewhat digestible. As we get into more of the, into the year and we have a better idea of where these teams are, it'll be a little bit less rote. I often run through sort of explaining what some of the stats are as well. And I'll try to only do that once in this round. Anyway, I'm really excited for this week's set of games. Let's hop in. Alabama, Texas, right? Like this was supposed to be the marquee. I mean, Texas is back, question mark. So, Alabama comes in at number 1 under Nick Saban. Texas currently sits at 26 under Steve Sarkisian. Look, Alabama, regardless, they were at 3 last season in beta rank. They finished at 3. They're at 3 right now, currently in beta rank after playing Utah State. We do have a little bit more of a comp for Alabama because Utah State has already played UConn. So for Alabama, we have a little bit more information than maybe we do for some other teams, because their opponent has at least played their only opponent we have in there has at least played someone else. But this is a really good offense. It's not quite, it's nowhere near in a lot of ways where they were in 2020, which was, probably the best offense that Nick Saban's put together. But Alabama was still quite good last season. Bill O'Brien's your offensive coordinator. They were really good at drive efficiency, putting together long drives to be able to put up points. Good at explosive drives, containing big plays, keeping teams off the board, or, not containing, like putting up big plays, putting up points. We're talking about offense here. Try to get it together, Rob. Play efficiency. This is your yards per play, controlling for explosives. So this is the least important of the core 4 beta rank metrics, but they did a good job with their yards per play outside of explosives, unsurprisingly. One of the things they did really well last season, avoiding 3 and outs, avoiding turnovers, negative drives. This is the defense doing bad things to you. Alabama was mostly able to avoid that last season. You have a pretty big run pass split. This is unsurprising. They tend to lean into Bryce Young quite a bit. They were number 3 in effective pass, number 51 in effective rush. I expect that to be largely similar this season. There is an argument to be made that Alabama last year, the offensive line wasn't where they wanted. They have a new offensive line coach in. They may look to run the ball a little bit more. I'm interested to see if that is the case. Bryce Young, of course, is your QB thus far this season in 1 game against a very overmatched opponent. 64% completion, 7 yards per attempt. Now, Texas comes in. They are at 25 in-season data for this season, but they were at 57 last season on defense. Pete Kwiatkowski is your defensive coordinator, though they also are taking a lot of input from Gary Patterson. So they were decent at drive efficiency last season, finding ways to get off the field and avoid giving up points, but they really struggled with giving up big plays last year. This is something they're going to absolutely have to clean up, particularly in this game against Alabama, who, if you remember the SEC championship game when they did beat Georgia, they hit a lot of big plays. Alabama likes to light you up for big ones, but they also struggle with play efficiency. They struggle with negative drives. They struggle to find ways to force 3 and outs, force the offense off the field. They had a really big run pass split last season, 35 in effective pass, 84 in effective rush. The big thing with this, this new 4-2-5 that they're running with Patterson in place is, are they able to slow down the run more? Now, Texas already has 1 game under their belt, but this will be a far stiffer matchup for them to be able to see where I think they're at. Flip it around to the other side of the football. Texas currently sits at 40. They were at 37 last season. And I do expect them to improve off of both of these numbers. I think the 40 is a small sample size. We'll figure out more about them in particular after this week against what could be the best defense in the country in Alabama this season. 32 in drive efficiency last season. They were decent, not great at putting up, sustaining long drives to put up points. 43 in explosive drives. They really do need to improve this number this season. 49 in negative drives. That's another watch out. Too many 3 and outs, too many turnovers. The really big thing that they struggled with, and you can tell they relied on Bijan Robinson last year, 22 in effective rush. They need Quinn Ewers to really open up the passing game. Xavier Worthy, they need him to also step up. They struggled last year throwing the football, number 61 in effective pass. Bama, of course, Pete Golding's your defensive coordinator here. I think they have an opportunity with everything they have coming back to be incredible this season, maybe even put up numbers they haven't put up since like 2016 defensively. They were pretty good at drive efficiency, but that was their worst of their metrics. They were still really good at it. Being able to force teams off the field, use the field to their advantage. They were excellent at play efficiency, very good at negative drives. No big run pass split. How many tackles for a loss is Will Anderson going to have in this game is an interesting question. Anyway, Quinn Ewers is at 66.7% completion percentage in his one game of action so far, 9.4 per. Texas is going to have to hit some big plays, and Ewers is going to have to take some of the load off of Bijan Robinson, because I actually think that they're going to be able to slow him down. He is a unique talent, out of Tucson, Arizona, of all places, at Texas, but they are going to need to get the passing game together if they're going to want to hang with Bama in this game. Beta rank has it at Bama 94% win probability and 19.88 on the spread. This was a fun matchup last season. I'm excited for this season too. This is Tennessee at Pitt. And this is a really good I'm really excited for this non-conference matchup. Josh Heupel is your head coach at Tennessee. He seemed a little bit like the last choice when they made the hire, but to be honest, he's probably turned out to be the best choice in a lot of ways. Pat Narduzzi is your head coach at Pitt. I think I tend to rile up Pitt fans when we talk about this. We'll get to it when we flip over to the next card and you get to see where we had Pitt's offense last season. But Tennessee was incredible offensively last year, did a really good job. They run a version of that Bryles offense. They're able, and while they did throw the ball more when they were at UCF, incorporating some of Heupel's air raid background as well, I think they do here with Hendon Hooker at QB, they do rely quite a bit more on the run. But they were number 4 offensively last season. Great offensive year for the Vols. 14 in drive efficiency. Now what they excelled at was explosive drives. Number 4 in explosive drives. They really put up big plays. Number 3 in play efficiency. Number 7 in negative drives, avoiding 3 and out and turnovers. If they're going to improve a bit, they could potentially get better at explosive drives. There's actual headroom there. But I think a big thing for them is to improve drive efficiency, being able to sustain drives to put up points. Big run pass split here for them. Number 3 in effective rush. Number 29 in effective pass. Of course, it's easier said than done. You need to stop the run to slow down Tennessee, but like I said, easier said than done. The Bryles system has spread you far out to run the football. They get a good last season Pitt defense, really carried the team under the radar, as the offense mostly feasted on really bad competition last year in the ACC. And also Tennessee's defense wasn't any good last season either, and Pitt played them. But Randy Bates is your defensive coordinator here. Pitt is number 15 overall on defense last season. They currently sit at 96. And again, this is a small sample, so some weirdness. This is why we're continuing to put out last year's stats, because I just have more confidence in the statistical validity of them, even as it relates to where they are this year. So what Pitt was pretty good at was negative drives. They forced a lot of 3 and outs, a lot of turnovers last season. They were a little more middle of the road in the Power 5 at drive efficiency and explosive drives. They could certainly use the field to their advantage more and find ways to get off without giving up big plays. But they had a really big run pass split last season. They were really good against the run. They were less good against the pass. That I think played to their advantage a little bit last season. I'm interested to see how well that holds up when we get into this game in Tennessee this year. Is Pitt's run defense as stout as they were last season? Hendon Hooker's your QB for Tennessee, 72% completion this season in one game, 8.8 per. We flip over to the defensive side of the football, or the other side of the football, I guess. Like there's a defense on either of these. not really a smooth transition there. Not in midseason form. Pitt's offense last season didn't grade out. Yeah, I mean, Nebraska fell for the Mark Whipple okey doke. Pitt just played they put up great offensive numbers. The problem was last season they did it against just a slate of horrific defenses. And they generally had good field position because they had a pretty good defense. But 48 last season, 23 in drive efficiency. This is where they were really good last year. They were able to put together long drives to put up points. They do have a new OC in from Boston College, Frank Signetti. He's all right. It's a really strange hire. It's far more that you like. Narduzzi has traditionally struggled to hire offense in, with the one exception of the 1 year he had Matt Canada in place. They struggled to put up big plays last season consistently. Negative drives, too many negative drives, too many 3-and-outs, too many turnovers. Of course, they had a huge run pass split, and Kenny Pickett put up some pretty good numbers throwing the ball around, but they didn't do much running the ball. I do expect them to run the ball a little bit more this season. Keaton Slovis, he's your quarterback for Pitt, 66.7%. Completion percentage, 12.8 per in that game against West Virginia. This is going to be an interesting matchup. Tennessee's defense is likely going to be, I think they will have done significant improvement if they're in the West Virginia range this year, but they're not going to be significantly better than the Mountaineers defense was. Tennessee last season really struggled to get off the field. They gave up a lot of drives for points, 90 in drive efficiency. Tim Banks is your defensive coordinator for Tennessee. They were better at explosive drives. They were really good at play efficiency. They struggled 3-and-outs and turnovers, negative drives there. No big run pass split. This is going to be interesting. I mean, I'm not sold on Pitt's offense. I mean, I wasn't sold on them last year. I mean, this is largely where the Narduzzi offenses have fallen year in, year out. I don't expect them to be a lot better or a lot worse than they were last year. This should be a pretty good game, though. I forgot to write this down, of course, like a total doofus. I forgot to write down the win probability. And I'm looking it up as we speak. Correction live. This is a true toss-up. So 50% win probability for each team. 0 on the spread. I'm excited. This should be a pretty fun matchup. Tennessee's favored in Vegas. I think that's probably a little bit more right. We'll see where Pitt's defense shakes out. And we'll get a really good idea of where they are from this game in particular. All right. You may be asking, why is this game on here? And this game's on here because we're going to find out a lot about USC's defense in this game. USC comes in, they're at 27. They're climbing off of where we had them projected last year. They've only played Rice up to this point. Lincoln Riley, of course, is your head coach. These two teams always play this game extremely early in the season because both of them have Notre Dame on their schedule, and they both play Notre Dame later in the season. And this is how the Pac-12 fits that Notre Dame game in. So Stanford's looking for a significant bounce back year under the same coaches. USC's looking for a significant bounce back year under brand new coaches. I would lean the new coaches is probably the more effective strategy. Anyway, last season with Graham Harrell as your OC, USC was number 40 on offense. They're at number 17 right now. They've only played Rice, like mileage may vary. I do expect them to be significantly better on this side of the ball in particular. They really struggled with drive efficiency last season, putting together long drives to put up points. They're going to have to improve that this year. Now, explosive drives, that's a number they could improve on. Again, they practically get a line change with players. So lots of in addition to a totally new staff, lots of new players in LA as well. They did a decent job avoiding 3-and-outs and turnovers. They had a pretty big run pass split. You expect that to continue. Although Lincoln Riley does run a fairly interesting run scheme, incorporates a lot of power in it. In a lot of ways, it reminds you of the old Joe Tiller one-back offense, which was also a lot of power. I shouldn't give all that credit to that for like Joe Tiller. There was also Dennis Erickson and, a bunch of other folks around that as well. Stanford's defense last season was awful. Perhaps they've bottomed out. I, however, don't expect them to suddenly turn into a good Power 5 unit. I grade Power 5 teams on a 1 to 65 scale. This tells you that Stanford was incredibly bad on defense last year. Lance Anderson's your defensive coordinator. He's been there for years. They've gotten worse nearly every year. I genuinely, I say this like whenever I talk about Stanford, I genuinely do not understand how Lance Anderson still has a job. Drive efficiency, they were awful at. Explosive drives, they were awful at. Everything, they were a little bit better against the pass than they were against the run. That's not all that surprising. Dwayne Akina is their cornerback and defensive backs coach, one of the best and most respected defensive coaches in the game. He was actually the play caller for Desert Swarm back in the day. Anyway, and I forgot to say, Caleb Williams in his one game against lowly Rice, 86% completion percentage, 11.3 per. Look, I think USC is going to put up some points. Like, they're going to romp on this side of the football. Stanford's pretty bad. They probably need some turnovers to be able to really hang in this game. But you flip it around, and I want to call out because look, I mean, if you're watching this, you probably actually really like college football, but I just want to call out here because this is important because people continually make this mistake. People that actually cover the Pac-12 continually make this mistake. Stanford has not run the ground and pound He-Man offense in years. So they throw the ball around. I'm excited in this case because David Shaw, I do expect the offense to bounce back. Their wide receivers really struggled last year. I do expect the offense to bounce back. Tanner McKee is a pretty good quarterback. Stanford, after one game against an FCS school, sits at 28 on offense. They were at 92 last season. 115 in drive efficiency. They really struggled to put together long drives to put up points last season. 70 in explosive drives. They have a pretty decent run pass split. And that's what I'm trying to call out here. I mean, like last week, they did get over 100 yards rushing. Most of that came on one play. So do not expect Stanford to suddenly come in and run the football. They haven't been able to in years. I mean, if you remember Bryce Love's last year there, like they all of a sudden couldn't run the football. It wasn't a Bryce Love problem. It was an offensive line coaching and scheme problem. Tavita Pritchard's your play caller here. He does a decent job throwing the football around. I think the wide receivers are better this year. And that leads us to USC's defense, which is in many ways, like as USC might be one of the enigmas of the college football season, this is probably their biggest question mark. What are they going to look like defensively? They were awful last season. Alex Grinch is your new play caller. They struggled in all facets, but in particular, I want to call out two things. They were really, really bad. They have a big run pass split. They were one of the worst teams in college football against the pass last season. Dante Williams, their defensive backs coach, is still there. He's a great recruiter. But they also gave up a lot of big plays. This matchup is interesting because Stanford is likely to throw the football around. This is going to tell us something. It's not going to tell us necessarily whether USC is like a better than Stanford. They should be. It is going to tell us a little bit about, on this side of the ball, where USC's pass defense is, which is the biggest question. Don't focus so much on the offense. The offensive line is probably going to be fine. They got a new offensive line coach in. The defensive line is a bit of a question. They do need to find more pressure on the quarterback, but they definitely need to cover better. And we're going to find out if they can in this game. They also brought in a bunch of new players on this side of the ball as well. Tanner McKee is your QB for Stanford, 81.5 completion percentage thus far this season against an FCS school, 11.4 per. USC 67% win probability on the road, favored by 4.88 in beta rank. This is a fun one. I'm really excited for this game as well. Mark Stoops is your head coach for Kentucky. Billy Napier is your new head coach for Florida. So last season, under the radar, Kentucky had a really good offense. Their offensive coordinator last season is off to be the offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. Not a bad gig. And Mark Stoops went out and hired a guy who runs the same offense in the NFL from the Niners. who was a position coach there. Rich Scangellera. Oh my God. I can't read my own handwriting. This happens so if you've watched before, I struggle with my handwriting sometimes, and I really did myself in this there, trying to fit it all in on the same page. It is Rick Scangarello. Wow. I apologize, Rich, for butchering that. Anywho, I'm excited to see this game because Kentucky's offense last year was really good. They still have Will Levis in place. They were really good across the board with one exception last season. So they were good at drive efficiency, good at explosive drives. The one thing they struggled a little bit last year was negative drives, too many 3-and-outs, too many turnovers. That's something for them to work on this season. But anytime you get a new play caller in, of course, mileage may vary. What worked last season may not work as well this season. The new OC may not be quite as good of a play caller as the current one or the last one. We'll find out. That's one of the things about this game is largely we're going to get to find out about where this Kentucky offense is, which is an exciting thing to get to figure out. Kentucky did have a little bit of a run-pass split, but they are a little bit more effective throwing the ball around than Utah was, which might, and Will Levis, he might be he's certainly a more NFL ready prospect than Cam Rising. I think Rising's a terrific college quarterback. But Levis is a guy that actually will get some draft publicity. And I'm interested to get to see him against what should be an interesting Gators defense. We talked about this a little bit in previewing Florida versus Utah last week. Patrick Toney comes over. He was really the better part of the coaching staff at Louisiana. The defense last season wasn't as bad, as the DC was a little bit of a scapegoat. When your offensive coordinator is your head coach, he's not going to scapegoat himself. But what Florida did well last year was use the field to their advantage, drive efficiency, find ways to get off the field. They were pretty good last week against Utah. In that second half, Utah did figure them out a little bit. They made some adjustments on the offensive line. That said, this is going to be another really good matchup. Florida will have faced a real gauntlet to start out this season with these first two games. Will Levis in one game thus far against Miami of Ohio, 65.6 completion percentage, 9.5 per. The other side of the football, look, this was the Anthony Richardson show last week, right? as we were all there for. Florida's offense currently sits at 60. Again, that's some one game weirdness. I expect that number is going to improve significantly once we get another comparison game on the books here, where at the very least we're able to compare Florida against Kentucky and Miami of Ohio, since they played Kentucky as well as Utah. But this Florida squad last season, Richardson did step in last year. He was terrific in the game. He really adds something running the football in particular, and he is a good passer. They were pretty middle of the road in a lot of their metrics last season. I do expect them to improve nearly across the board here. They should have an opportunity, I think, to improve. Anthony Richardson thus far against Utah was 70.8 completion percentage and 7 yards per, which is a really good number for, now I will say, of course, he was able to open it up with his legs a little bit, but did a really good job against what in large part is a pretty solid Utah back end, particularly when you have Clark Phillips there and some guys that they had back from injury last year. Kentucky's defense was decent last season, 22 overall. They sit at 70 right now. Again, small sample size. What they were really good at was drive efficiency, number 6 overall. They found ways to get off the field. Brad White's your defensive coordinator here. But they struggled at negative drives, not enough 3-and-outs, not enough turnovers. They're going to have to improve that number here in particular. No big run pass split. This should be a solid matchup, I think, for this Kentucky defense and this Florida offense to get another view of where Florida's likely to sit this season. And should we take Kentucky seriously again as a challenger in the SEC East? Challenger to Georgia. Georgia looks pretty darn good again. Don't they? Oh, I should have said Florida's a 62% win probability and 4.2. favored. All right. Houston and Texas Tech. This is a good one. It is. This should be a fun matchup. This is one of those ones, like, as I said, like a lot of, there's not as much going on in the top 25, but there's some really good under the radar games going on this week. Houston comes in at number 30 right now. Texas Tech is at number 40. Dana Holgorsen, Joey McGuire is your new head coach out in Lubbock. This is on the road at Lubbock. Hopefully they're flying in. Lubbock's out in the middle of goddamn nowhere. And I grew up in the middle of Wyoming. I know what the middle of nowhere is like. At least there's mountains. Anyway, Houston, they struggle. I mean, look, Holgorsen is known for his offensive acumen, but Houston was. This is a good group of five offense, but this would not fly as a power five offense. I think they certainly have room to improve. They struggled to put together long drives last season. They were decent in explosive drives, number 39 there. They currently sit at 57. So not much different, but again, like only one game in against a decent UTSA squad. 69 in drive efficiency. They were better at avoiding negative drives, avoiding 3 and outs, avoiding turnovers. Decent run pass split, 32 versus 64. They are going to look to throw the ball. Clayton Tune is your quarterback here. 68.8 completion percentage thus far, 6.4 per. They get a Texas Tech defense that's in full on rebuild mode. I mean, Tim DeRuyter is your defensive coordinator. He comes in from Oregon. He kind of struggled last year as the DC at Oregon. The Ducks were not really good defense. I mean, we got to see a little bit this year too, but the Ducks were not a good defensive team last year, even with Thibodeau there, and a host of other really highly recruited guys. Like, what are you doing, Oregon? Anyway, Texas Tech last season was horrendous defensively, 102 in beta rank. They currently sit at 31. We've only got one game in. This is going to be an important game, I think, to really see where Texas Tech might sit on defense. They struggled with drive efficiency. You could put together long drives to put up points on them last year. They did a little bit better at containing big plays, but they were really bad at finding ways. I mean, that negative drives number is a really big watch out. 111 right there. That's not enough 3 and outs, not enough turnovers. No big run pass split here. But like I said, like this is going to give us an idea of where Texas Tech sort of sits defensively and give us an idea of where they might sort of fall in the, like in the middle of the, are they in the conversation of the middle of the Big 12? Are they further down? This game's going to tell us a lot about where they sit. You flip it around. Houston's defense is pretty good under Doug Belk. Zach Kitley comes over from Western Kentucky to be your OC here. They're at 31 last season. They're currently at 14. I mean, we'll see how that holds up. This will be a good matchup again to tell us where they sort of are going to shake out. Last year, they were far better at explosive drives than they were at drive efficiency. They did struggle to put together, long drives to put up points, but they were a big play offense. Not great at negative drives. I mean, that number 30 overall number, tells you they gave up a few too many turnovers, a few too many 3 and outs. Pretty decent run pass split. 53 in effective rush, 23 in effective pass. I was a little surprised Tyler Shuck won the job again out of camp. He's injured again, likely out for 2 weeks. That means Donovan Smith, who played a lot last year, is back in as your starter. He played really well in, we have a small sample again, what we have for Texas Tech, but 87.5 completion percentage, 13.8 per. This is going to be a significant step up in defensive competition from what Texas Tech has already seen. But I'm excited. It's going to tell us a little bit about Houston, a team that I think, in my mind had an opportunity to be a better defense than they were even last season. What Houston did really well last year was drive efficiency. They found this is a really good group of 5 defense. They found ways to get off the field, avoid giving up points. Less great against with explosive drives and play efficiency. They were decent at negative drives, forcing 3 and outs, forcing turnovers. They probably need, in order to improve this year, to reduce that explosive drives number. Interestingly, they match up pretty well here. They were better against the pass than they were against the run last year. That's something to keep an eye out again here with Kitley there. Like Texas Tech is going to look to throw the football again. This is a true toss-up again, 50% win probability, toss-up and the spread. This should be a really fun one. I'm excited to see this game. And both ways, like find out if Houston's defense can be where we think they are. coming into this year. And if they are, I think they've got a real shot to challenge Cincinnati, and then find out where in the world Texas Tech's defense is going to be, in a lot of ways from where they were. There's, the only room is up, the only way to go is up. How far, I think, is an outstanding question. Sort of the honor code game. I mean, the battle of the I think Jason Kirk could put it rather well. Like you described this as like a lock-in, like a youth group lock-in. Anyway, 39 Baylor at 38 Baylor at 25 BYU. David Rand is your head coach for Baylor, of course. Kalani Sitake is your head coach for BYU. Last season, like Baylor was decent offensively. They're at number 10 right now in beta rank. Again, we'll see where they sit after, a few more games in. But 30 on offense last season. Jeff Grimes, who used to call plays at BYU, is your offensive coordinator for Baylor. And they were not a super efficient offense last year, 44 in drive efficiency, but they were pretty explosive. Number 18 in explosive drives, 32 in play efficiency, 44 in negative drives, too many 3-and-outs, too many turnovers for these guys. Now, what I do expect to change a little bit with Blake Shapen in at QB is I do expect them to throw a little bit more. They were really run heavy last season. They didn't have quarterbacks with the greatest accuracy and arm talent. But they had a really big run pass split. I expect it to be a little more balanced coming into this year. Grimes has shown the ability to either figure out, putting up big plays, running the ball, or throwing the ball. I think that they should be an interesting offense to keep an eye on here. I don't think that they have as much upside as some people think coming into this year. Advanced stats were not super high on Baylor coming into this year. Defensively last season, BYU currently with one, this is why I'm not showing you this year's stats. They're at number 7 overall on defense this season. That is highly improbable given where they were last year. Elisa Tuyaki is your defensive coordinator. Yeah, I got that one. I think I did. Is your defensive coordinator for BYU. They've struggled a little bit. They were not great. I mean, this is a decent group of 5 defense last year. 70 overall, 92 in drive efficiency. This is where they really have to clean things up. They have to find ways to use the field to their advantage, get off the field. Negative drives, play efficiency also, not great. Where they were best at was containing big plays. They did have a decent run pass split here. They were at 85 in effective pass. That's something to keep an eye on. They're going to have to be better against the pass. Again, like with Baylor's probably going to look to throw the ball a little bit more than they did last season. But Shapen is at 85% completion percentage, 10.7 per in the one game we've seen so far. I'm not expecting this to be some massive step up in competition, BYU's defense, but they'll likely have some decent field position because BYU is a fun offense. Flip it around. BYU's offense was really good last season, number 7 overall in beta rank. That's an excellent. I mean, there are tons of Power 5 teams that would trade for that offense. 16 in drive efficiency. They were really good at explosive drives, number 7 there. 30 in play efficiency, 18 in negative drives. Not a lot of 3-and-outs, not a lot of turnovers. Aaron Roderick is your offensive coordinator here. What's interesting, and keep an eye on it here, is look, they were really effective throwing the ball last year. 12 in effective pass, 24 in effective rush, but they hit some big running plays because Jaron Hall, their QB, has wheels. So keep an eye on that in this game. He's one of the most exciting quarterbacks, I think, in college football. He adds an extra dimension with his legs, that when they really need it, he is often there to get them a big play on the run. He's at 78.1% completion percentage, 8.2 per. Ron Roberts is your defensive coordinator for Baylor. Really good DC and works well with Aranda. They were at 20 last year. They sit at number 38 overall. I should say BYU sits at number 4 currently. I mean, I would not at all be surprised to see BYU put up another top 10 offense with what they've got returning. Baylor, I do expect to have a decent defense. They do lose a lot off of what they had last season. 38 in drive efficiency. They definitely, you could put some drives together against this Baylor team last year. 17 in explosive drives. You know, they did a better job containing big plays. I mean, I think they had a really big reputation defensively last year, but they were not as good as people. In advanced stats, when you control for the opponents, they weren't quite as good. Decent negative drives number, forcing 3 and outs, forcing turnovers. They did have a pretty big run pass split last season. And this is where like Baylor was they needed to turn, like if you showed up to throw the ball on them, they might have needed some turnovers last year, but they were pretty effective stopping the run. That's going to be this is going to be a heck of a matchup of what I think both with Aranda and Roberts are two great defensive minds against a really good OC in Roderick. And Jaron Hall. Like this is, stay up and watch this. I mean, Mississippi State and Arizona is also going to be on at this time. Have two TVs on and live it up. Enjoy yourself. I'll be in Madison, Wisconsin watching this game a little less late at night. At least it's on Central Time. We did it. That is the Saturday 6 for this week. I'm excited. I'm excited for this season in particular. I'm always interested in college football. Beta Rank is designed to not only be predictive, predicting wins, but it's also designed to be descriptive. And it's everything you see here is contained within it and adjusted. So there's no stats I'm presenting here that aren't included in the model itself, which I think is important. You'll often see people presenting stats that sit outside of whatever their spread model that they won't divulge to you is. Anyway, so I'm excited. I'm going to be on the road this week. I will, if you follow me on Twitter, I'll post some pictures from Wisconsin, maybe try to post a video of jumping around. I'm excited. We're going to go to the game. We're going to jump around. The guy I do the Pac-12 podcast with. Going to eat my weight in cheese and ice cream for sure. I didn't go backpacking earlier this year and do like 60 miles in Idaho for no return. Like, this is my return. This is my payoff, is like for one weekend, I get to eat an enormous amount of dairy. And if it's ice cream, also sugar. But it should be a lot of fun. I'm excited. Like, we're going to find out a little bit about Wisconsin's offense against a pretty good, defensive minded head coach for Washington State. And then, Washington State struggled against Idaho. So we'll get to find out if off-season Cam Ward hype was just a lot of hype. Anyway, I will update Beta Rank on Sunday morning by about 9 a.m. We had some wackiness, of course, this early season 1. I was in Pennsylvania this last weekend at a cabin, and the internet was horrendous. It was like dial-up. It wasn't actually dial-up, but I've had better experiences with dial-up. And then, you're waiting for all the games to finish, including the one on Monday night. And then the folks that provide that I purchased the data from didn't have the Clemson Georgia Tech game in. So hopefully I will actually live up to my promise and have Beta Rank up before Vegas gets opening lines up. Anyway, let's do the thing. Anyway. You can find all the stats you just saw and a whole lot more at sharpcollegefootball.com. I'm Rob Bauer, and I'm the econometrician behind Beta Rank. You can find me at Beta Rank FB and at Sharp College Football. We have a Pac-12 podcast at 12 Pac Radio, and you can find the back episodes of that at sharpcollegefootball.com/12 Pac Radio. I'm excited. This is the last week we're going to have FCS data in. After this week, everyone will have played an FBS game. We will continue to wait in-season data. And then after week 5, this is another thing about Beta Rank that I brag about, to my own horn. Anyway, Beta Rank after week 5 doesn't contain any out-of-season data. It is only in-season data. I don't like it. Recruiting, ranking, none of that stuff improves the model fit. We're able to knock it out just off of in-game data. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you again next week. I'm going to aim for Monday since there's not a holiday weekend and I won't be traveling. Yeah, I'll be back from Madison by Monday. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll see you out there.